Have you found yourself waiting on quarterbacks this season? Here are 2 QBs I'm targeting and 2 QBs I'm staying away from. We start with Geno Smith. I am in on Geno Smith. He's going around pick 115 in underdog. That makes him the QB 14 as of August 15th. I understand if you're a little bit hesitant, he was a punchline, to put it nicely, for much of his career prior to arriving in Seattle, coming off of a huge breakout at age 32.
I'm an old man. I hate everything but Matlock.
When you dig into the numbers, though, it's hard not to buy back in on Geno Smith. This was the QB 5 in fantasy last season. He led the NFL completion percentage over expected. He ranked in the top 5 in on-target percentage. He was also one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL last season. Per Pro Football Focus, Smith led the league in what PFF defines as deep passing touchdowns with 15. He was incredibly consistent week to week. Even after it felt like he hit somewhat of a wall midway through the year, he was able to get back on track. There's a lot to like in terms of the surrounding pieces in Seattle. You got an elite wide receiver in DK Metcalf right in the middle of his prime. You get a solid veteran number 2 in Tyler Lockett, and the high upside rookie in Jackson Smith-Njigba. That to me is one of the best wide receiver trios in the league, if not the best. And on the running back side, you add Zach Charbonnet to another promising young back in Kenneth Walker. Seattle has one of the best skill position groups, period, in the NFL. When you dig a little bit deeper, the Seahawks were hesitant to use 3 wide receiver sets last season, especially on early downs. We saw a lot of dual tight end sets. I think that changes this season with Jackson Smith-Njigba in the mix. They're going to have to find ways to get him on the field. That opens up even more big play opportunities for this passing game. Lastly, we don't think of Geno Smith as a runner, but he did finish 8th in total rushing yards among quarterbacks last season, just over 20 yards per game. He's not Jalen Hurts. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Josh Allen in the red zone. He's giving you an extra 2 fantasy points per game on the ground, and that's not nothing. So if I'm waiting on a quarterback, Geno Smith is one of my favorite targets in round 9 or 10. Another QB I like this season late in drafts, Aaron Rodgers. It's easy to get caught up in the Aaron Rodgers narrative, but everything we've read and everything we've heard about Aaron Rodgers in New York, it's true. If you watch Hard Knocks so far, he's clearly rejuvenated. He's excited to be in a new situation, and especially with a team that is willing to welcome him and take some risks and go all in this season. The Dalvin Cook signing is exactly the type of move the Green Bay Packers would never make. That all in, we're going for it this year type of move. Green Bay was always focused on the future. The Jets are focused on 2023. Yes, Rodgers is coming off of a down year. There's a reason he's available in the 120s in a lot of drafts. In terms of years when he has not suffered a major injury that caused him to miss significant time, last year was the worst fantasy season of his career by a pretty good margin. The big yardage games for Rodgers, they pretty much evaporated, although that's been the case for a while now. And more importantly, he experienced massive touchdown regression in 2022 compared to his previous 2 MVP seasons. Even so, in what felt like kind of a worst case scenario year for Aaron Rodgers, he still finished as the QB 13 last season. Was it a disappointment after he finished as the QB 6 and the QB 3 the previous 2 years? Yes, it was, but it was not as much of a disaster in fantasy as it felt like in real life. QB 13, QB 14, that's probably the floor for Aaron Rodgers this season. Physically, I'm of the belief that he still has plenty left in the tank. The arm strength, the decision making, it's all still there. When that goes for a quarterback, you tend to notice it. It jumps off the screen. I haven't seen that yet from Aaron Rodgers. With that said, the days of Rodgers tossing 40, 45 touchdowns, those are probably behind us at this point. But if he can stay upright behind that Jets offensive line, I think Rodgers can easily push for back end of the top 10 value this season. I'm happy to take him over Daniel Jones, who's going at about the same ADP. I'll even take him over Anthony Richardson. I'd rather have more of a sure thing in Aaron Rodgers, and I'd rather pass on guys like Deshaun Watson and Tua Tagovailoa to grab Aaron Rodgers 2 or 3 rounds later. 2 mid to late round quarterbacks I am out on this season. Number 1, Tua Tagovailoa. He's going around pick 93 in underdog drafts. That makes him the QB 10 this season. I understand the upside with Tua, but this is not a risk I'm willing to take this season. It's a discussion that we tend to dance around, but the reality is that Tua is 1 concussion away from having his career placed in jeopardy. We're at that point based on what happened last season. Tua and the Dolphins are going to be under immense scrutiny. Anytime he takes a hit, there's going to be more eyes on Tua than there would the typical NFL quarterback. It's just not a situation that I want to pin the hopes of my fantasy team upon. I'm willing to acknowledge the upside here. He has the best wide receiver combo in the league in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Both of those guys were top 10 fantasy wide receivers last season. They're perfect fits for Tua. They're perfect fits for this Dolphins offense. When Tua was on the field, no team generated more big play pass touchdowns than the Miami Dolphins. But outside of that duo, this is not an overwhelmingly talented skill group. The depth at receiver beyond Hill and Waddle is very, very questionable. The Dolphins have virtually no presence whatsoever at tight end. They let Mike Gesicki go last season. Durham Smythe is going basically undrafted in virtually every league. And beyond that, even if Tua stays healthy, Miami wants to commit to the run more than they did last season. Miami ranked 26th in total rushing yards as a team, only generated 12 touchdowns on the ground. Knowing Mike McDaniel, knowing where he came from, he wants to boost those numbers this season, and that likely comes at the expense expense of Tua in this passing game. Another quarterback I am out on, Russell Wilson. He's going around pick 135. That makes him the QB 18. Everybody keeps asking, are you going to draft Russell Wilson? I keep giving them the Nick Saban. I'm not going to, so quit asking.
I'm not going to, so quit asking.
I was all in on Russell Wilson and this Broncos team last season, and I could not have been more wrong. I thought the change of scenery would be exactly what he needed to get back on track. I love the skill position players around him. Everything went haywire, could not have gone worse. There is it can't possibly be that bad again principle at play here, but at the same time, this is a guy who regressed in virtually every quarterback metric over the last 3 seasons. The Broncos went out and got Jarrett Stidham. I don't think that's a coincidence. They're buying themselves some insurance there if Russell Wilson can't get this thing turned around. Looking at other quarterbacks in this range, I'd rather take Derek Carr around later. Matthew Stafford, who's going 30 picks after Russell Wilson, presents a pretty similar risk profile, perhaps a little bit more upside there if he stays healthy. Maybe even chance it on someone like Kenny Pickett or Brock Purdy. You can get those guys 3 or 4 rounds later than Russell Wilson in most underdog drafts.